is finally here. We are about to hear the jury's verdict in the Depp v. Heard case. I know I am incredibly excited and a little nervous, and I think probably most of the world is. What's going to happen is at 3 o'clock, the judge gave everybody notice of an hour from an hour plus whatever time is left in the hour. So the jury came back roughly an hour ago, and then it's going to be read at 3 o'clock, and we will know then what the verdict is. I think it's going to take them a while to read it. If you remember from the video I did, I'm going to turn my camera just a little bit. From the video that I did, the jury verdict form is very long. It's not just something small that, the jury could casually fill out. They don't just write in a number. They don't just say guilty, not guilty. It's pretty lengthy. There were a lot of individual questions. We don't know whether the jury will read, yes, 3 p.m. Eastern time, Jake Muir, but we don't know whether they're going to read every single question, or whether, because she also put at the top of some of the detailed questions, we, the jury, find, and, that the standard was met here. So they may just read those summary questions. We don't know. But either way, it's a lot of questions, and it's going to take them a while to go through it. My guess is that they will read the entire thing in detail. That will be really useful for us because it's going to help us understand what their thinking was about whatever the verdict was. I think that's going to be critical, because I think the entire world is going to be dissecting this verdict. Everybody is going to be asking, did they make the right decision? Was the right evidence admitted? Should this have turned out the way it actually did? So I want to talk a little bit about what we're going to see in the jury verdict form. This is what I assume that they're going to be reading, so you'll be ready to hear exactly, what's going to be coming. So welcome everybody to the live stream as more people come in. This is it. We are about to hear at 3 o'clock. They are going to be reading the verdict at 3 o'clock. I'm going to have the audio for that, and you will see that as we get going. So the verdict form was divided into several parts. The jury has to answer 3 separate questions for Johnny Depp, and then that relate to the 3 alleged false statements, the ones he said were defamatory. And then they have to answer damages questions if they find that there was defamation. So the first statement was the title of the Washington Post op-ed that Amber Heard wrote. It was, Amber Heard, I spoke up against SV and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. I am cryptically abbreviating for the YouTube algorithm. SV is sexual, which doesn't bother YouTube, and the V rhymes with silence. So the questions they have to answer under that are, do you find that he has proven all the elements of defamation? And the judge left nothing to chance. This was, in this sense, a pro-Amber verdict form, because she broke it out. It wasn't that they could just say, yeah, there was defamation here. They had to say, was it made or published by Ms. Heard? Was it about Mr. Depp? Was it false? Did it have a defamatory implication? Was it designed and intended by Ms. Heard? And did it convey a defamatory implication to someone other than Mr. Depp? Now, you could say that that is a pro-Amber Heard list of questions that have to be answered. But the same sort of breakout happened for Amber Heard's claim of defamation against Johnny Depp. So it was an even-handed choice or decision by the judge. The second part they're going to have to answer, and if they find, this verdict form is very detailed. It is absolutely no wonder that it took the jury a while to go through that, because it was very detailed. If they found that they answered 1A, do you find that he has proven all the elements of defamation? If they said yes to that, then they next went to by what standard? Was it clear and convincing evidence? Was it actual malice? And they have to actually find that. They have to say that on the verdict form. Then they went through the same thing with the second 2 statements. The next one was, then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. Again, he had to show that, he had to show, and the jury had to find that he showed that he had proven all the elements of defamation, with each single step broken out, again, by clear and convincing evidence, again, with actual malice. And then the third statement by Amber Heard in the Washington Post op-ed that Johnny Depp said was defamation was, "I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse." Each of those elements had to be broken out again and again. It had to be found by clear and convincing evidence, and that he acted, or that she acted, with actual malice. Then, and only then, if the jury answered yes to those questions for any of those three statements. Now, Johnny Depp did not have to win every single statement. He didn't have to prove every single statement was defamation. Any one of those statements could have been considered defamation. So it was numbers 4 and 5 are the next questions. If the jury found that any of those statements was defamation and proven to the proper standard, then and only then do they go to the question of damages. And there were two types of damages. The first is the jury is being asked about compensatory damages. Compensatory damages are the damages that are awarded to compensate a party to make up for all the things that they lost as a result of whatever wrong was done to them. An example in any regular civil case might be an auto wreck. Maybe the person had medical bills. Maybe they were out of work. These are things that compensate the person for what they've lost. And in Johnny Depp's case, he said what he lost was a career. He lost $22.5 million, there was testimony, from Pirates of the Caribbean 6. He says, "I should have been on that. I was going to be on that." He had his agent come and say, yes, he was actually negotiated a deal for him at that price for him to be in Pirates 6. He didn't get it. He didn't get it because of Amber Heard's op-ed, which defamed him. That made him too much to touch. There was dispute against it, and in fact, there was a tweet just a little bit ago from Variety magazine saying, Johnny Depp said he has lost tens of millions of dollars due to Amber Heard's allegations of domestic violence. But the testimony showed that he was a star in serious decline even before the allegations and was unemployable by major studios. Now, that's Variety's take on that. In fact, however, the jury does not have to believe that. There was plenty of testimony from Johnny Depp's side that he had that he was going to be given the opportunity to be in Pirate 6. It had actually been negotiated and there was a price for it. So that is going to be one of the things the jury is going to be looking at. Amber Heard's team hit hard when it came time for the closing arguments on the question of, was Johnny Depp really damaged? How much did he really lose? And the reason they did that is pretty obvious, which is what they are hoping is, even if they lose, even if the jury comes back and says, okay, yeah, defamation, and okay, yes, the defamation caused some damages, they'll say, but not a lot, very little, just a tiny bit. And they'll give some small number there. That's what Amber Heard's team is hoping for. So what they what they were hoping to do is at least hold the damages down if it comes to that. The net worth of Amber Heard is said to be a fraction of what the suit actually alleged, not even up to the amount just of the Pirate 6 loss that Johnny Depp had. So it seems pretty unlikely that she could pay that. And she would never actually be able to do that. Now, there was another type of damages on the verdict form, and that was punitive damages. In the closing arguments, Johnny Depp's team never gave an idea of, this is what we want. Somebody says my mic is not plugged in. I hope that, let me move it closer to me. Maybe that'll help. And thank you for telling me that. So with punitive damages, those are not damages that compensate a party. They aren't related to what the party lost. Punitive damages are to punish and deter the person who did the act. That's to punish and deter that what the person did and others similarly situated is how the law usually reads. So those punitive damages, Johnny Depp's team didn't say in closing, we want X amount. They didn't give the jury any number to plug in there. It is entirely up to the jury. They could say a huge number, they could say a small number. We really don't know. So, and I'm just checking to make sure if the live has started yet, but it has not. So what I'm going to be doing is playing the audio of what happens, and you will be able to hear the jury read the verdict. Now, if you notice on the thumbnail when you came in, I had a picture of a jury. Now, that's not the actual jury that is handling the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard case. Why is that? We don't have a picture of them. And why? There's actually an order that prevents anybody from taking pictures of the jury, from harassing them, from contacting them, and their names. The judge extended the length of time during which their names will not be released. And those names are withheld from the public for an entire year. So I couldn't do a picture of this jury, so I just did a picture of a jury. So you get the idea that that's what's happening. We are about to have the verdict read. So I've gone through the verdict form as it's going to be for Johnny Depp's side. Now I want to talk about the verdict form for Amber Heard's side, because you may remember she had a counterclaim. And I had some really good questions about what is a counterclaim. The way it works is that the counterclaim is something that relates to the same two parties who are already involved in the case, but it's an entirely separate matter. Sometimes it's a claim, they call it compulsory. It has to be brought in the same case. Sometimes it's just permissive. It could be brought in the same case. But in this case, Amber Heard alleges that Johnny Depp may say, I defamed him. She says, no, I didn't. But in fact, he defamed me. He defamed me with 3 statements that his attorney made. Now, originally, Amber Heard had more statements than that in her original counterclaim, which is its own lawsuit and its own claim. So that counterclaim had several different alleged defamatory statements, but the judge removed most of those because of the statute of limitations. The judge said, it's been too long since those statements were made. I'm not going to let you bring those statements in this case. So let's go through the verdict form that we're going to hear read shortly from the jury. And let's start with Amber Heard. So she also had 3 statements where she said these 3 statements are where I think there was defamation against me. These 3 statements were made by Alan Waldman, who was the attorney for Johnny Depp. They weren't actually made by Johnny Depp. And so one of the things the jury has to find is that Johnny Depp authorized these particular statements, that he was acting as the agent. So the first statement that she contends was defamation is this one. Amber Heard and her friends in the media use fake SV allegations as both a sword and shield, depending on their needs. They have selected some of her SV hoax facts as a sword, inflicting them on the public and Mr. Depp. So that's her first statement. She says that was defamation against me. And just like with what we just went through with the Johnny Heard side of things, there are several different statements that they have to affirm under this. First, they have to say Mr. Waldman was acting as an agent for Johnny Depp and made or published this statement. So that's the first thing they have to check off or write yes. They have to say that the statement was about Miss Heard. That's pretty clear since he named her, but they do have to do that. It's part of the elements. They have to say that the statement was seen by someone other than Miss Heard. Again, that should be a pretty clear answer since it was actually published. But then they get to the hardest question of all. Was the statement false? And that's where the jury would probably have the most issues. That's where the jury is going to spend most of its time talking and trying to figure it out, most probably. So the second statement that Amber Heard alleged was part of the defamation against her was, quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops, but the first attempt didn't do the trick. The officers came to the penthouses, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damage to face or property. So Amber and her friends spilled a little wine and roughed the place up, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, and then placed a second call to 911. That right there is going to be the place where there is going to be any discussion. If there's going to be any discussion by the jury, that's the one. That's the one where I think it's going to be harder for Johnny Depp. If we're going to see a verdict, I think that would be the most likely place. And again, for both of these, even if they answer those questions, yes, they have to also say that it was proven by clear and convincing evidence, and that Mr. Waldman acted with actual malice. And that standard is a very high standard, not your average civil standard. Then the third statement that is part of Amber Heard's allegations is the statement all of these were made in the Daily Mail, a British publication. And the last one was, "We have reached the beginning of the end of Miss Heard's abuse hoax against Johnny Depp." Again, for that, the jury has to answer those 4 questions underneath. Mr. Waldman, while acting as an agent for Mr. Depp, made or published the statement. The statement was about Miss Heard. The statement was seen by someone other than Miss Heard, and the statement was false. Again, they have to answer the standard was met, clear and convincing evidence with actual malice. So in case you're just coming into the live, 3 o'clock is when the jury is going to announce its verdict. So we are waiting. I'm going to do audio of the verdict when it's announced. And so as soon as we get to it, you'll be able to hear it. It's just a few minutes away. Right now, I'm going through what is it that we're going to hear from the jury? What is it that we're going to hear them read? And I'm going through the verdict form. It is extremely complicated. It's a multi-page verdict form, and there are a lot of pieces to it, a lot of questions. The reason the judge is doing that is she's trying to make sure that the case is protected from appeal. She wants to make sure that this case doesn't have to be tried again. Can she be sure of that? No. But she figures this jury verdict form is going to get her partway there, because by having the jury verdict form as specific as possible, it will be easy to tell that the jury considered each and every fact, that they looked at every detailed question. Now, it's actually helpful for the defendant to have a really detailed verdict form. In this case, though, both parties are defendants. So for Johnny Depp's case against Amber Heard, it's helpful to have the verdict form be really detailed. For Amber Heard, that's helpful. And the other way around, when Amber Heard makes her counterclaim against Johnny Depp, it's helpful for her to have a really detailed it's helpful for him to have a really detailed form, because that way the jury has to think about each and every single question. Yesterday, I did a video about the jury's one question that they sent out, and it was a very detailed question going right to the point of one of these small subpart questions. Some people said, why did they care about that? Because, wasn't it obvious? Well, the reason they cared about it is because the judge made them answer every single one of these little pieces, so that there was no question that it would in fact be a verdict that was related to the law, related to what was happening. Now, Amber Heard's damages divide into the exact same 2 pieces as Johnny Depp. The first is compensatory damages, and the second is punitive damages. Now, unlike with Johnny Depp, his team, when it came time for closing arguments, didn't give us any amount that they wanted the jury to fill in for punitive damages. But Amber Heard's team did. They said they wanted $350,000 in punitive damages. That seemed really small to me. I was really surprised by that. I don't know if that reflected on their concern that maybe they hadn't done that well in the case, or what made them go with such a low number. But I was really surprised. Maybe they thought that if they threw a number out there, then in case the jury was thinking about punitive damages, that number would stick in their head, and then there wouldn't be any more than that against Amber Heard. Maybe that's what they were thinking. I don't really know. So there are All the lawyers are sitting in the courtroom now. They are waiting for the verdict to be read. I'm going to go to the audio as soon as it comes up. Yeah, it's not up yet. So, but it's any minute now because it's 2:58 and 3 o'clock is when the jury is supposed to come back with the verdict. We've been waiting a little over an hour for that because the judge decided to give everybody plenty of time, a full hour plus however much to the end of the current hour. So it's been about an hour and a half since the jury came back. So I can tell you from experience how everybody sitting in that courtroom is feeling. They are so tense. If you're the attorney or the party, I mean, you have spent years working toward this moment, and here you are, everything on the line. Win or lose, going to be decided. It all came down to this minute, and it's in the power of somebody else's hands. So you've been waiting there, and you are just waiting. So Johnny Depp is not in the courtroom. His attorneys asked the judge if it was okay if he was not present in the courtroom for the verdict, and the judge said it was okay. Personally, I think that was a mistake. I think if you ask a jury to sit through 6 weeks of testimony, you ought to be there. You ought to hear what they have to say. But, you know, I can understand that would be an incredibly tense moment. I totally understand that. But I do think it would have been better for Johnny Depp to have been there. Now, Amber Heard is there. All the attorneys are there. And let me tell you what, it will be so tense in that room. So tense because everybody waiting. What is the jury going to do? And we are about to hear that in the next minute. It's 3 o'clock now, but the judge hasn't come into the courtroom yet. So it should be any minute. As I mentioned, I think it's going to take a while to read the verdict form. I don't think it's going to be something where we immediately know the answer, because I think they're going to read most or all of the verdict form, and it's long. But we will start to get some indications right away. We will start to be able to see that they are leaning one way or the other. Okay, the judge is coming into the room. Let's go ahead and
on standby where we have seen.
Okay. All right.
About 3 o'clock. All right, are we ready for the jury?
All right, so the jury is about to come in for the last time.
This is a court of law.
So I don't know about you, but I am kind of nervous.
The verdict, I will not tolerate any outbursts whatsoever.
No outbursts, she's saying. And I can understand that. Let me make sure it's loud enough for you to be able to hear it. Give me some thumbs up if you can hear. Right now, nobody's talking. Too loud for me. Tell me if it's too loud for you too. Give me a thumbs down if it's too loud. All right, everybody's standing there, and I can tell you they are tense like they have never been tense before. This is the biggest case of any of their lives. That includes Amber Heard. That's everybody. So here comes the jury for the last time, and we still don't see them. We don't ever see their faces, and that's part of a court order. We are not allowed to see that. Okay, so I got a thumbs up. You can hear. Sound is perfect. Good. Amber Heard looks very tense. I can understand that. I would be too. I am too, and I'm not even a party.
If I could have the attorneys approach me.
Oh no, they're going to have an attorney conference first. We have to wait through an attorney conference. Okay, well, I don't know if she's going to show it to the attorneys or ask them a question. That's kind of unusual. Normally I would just expect the jury to straight up read whatever they're going to say. Read their verdict form in probably pretty great detail. But now we're going to have to wait through an attorney conference with the judge. There may be some problem with the verdict form that she's concerned about. I don't know. I don't know why she would be having this conference, or she may want to share it with them for whatever reason. But anyway, so we are all waiting. Yes, Amber Heard looks very worried, very, very worried, very tense, I would say. I am not surprised about that.
All right, again, you're looking live. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what I need you to do, I need to give the forms back to you.
When you find a defamatory statement,
I know there's an echo. I'm
one
sorry
or
about
more,
that.
you need to fill out the compensatory damages. It has to be at least $1 for compensatory damages and up to whatever you feel the damages should be.
Oh my gosh. What? Okay. What that just told us, and now
Back to the deliberation room and do that for me, okay?
Oh my gosh. No way. Okay. Wow. So the jury is filing back out. So here's what happened. It sounds like they found that one of the parties did defame the other, but...
All right, so we'll be in recess till we hear back from them. Don't go too
Oh
far.
my
Okay.
gosh.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so, okay, here's what happened. That was strange, but here's what happened. The jury gave the form to the judge, and apparently the form did not have anything written in for compensatory damages. It said one party defamed the other, but it had blank for compensatory. Now, she did not say it had blank for compensatory, and then you need to decide if you want to do punitives because that's blank too. She just said blank for compensatory. Quote, even if it's only $1. That is a possibility. You can give $1 in compensatory damages because you find that the other one party was defamed, but you know, it wasn't anything, and the attorneys are talking like crazy. Of course they are. But the jury has to find if there is in fact a verdict that one party defamed the other, there has to be a compensatory damages verdict, even $1. There has to be something filled out there. And apparently they found one party defamed the other. We don't know which way it went, but they did not put a dollar figure in, even $1. So the judge maybe, my guess from that, they put in punitive damages. They put in punitives and they didn't put in the dollar, so they couldn't do that. So what that means is they're going to have to go back out to the jury room and write in $1 or whatever number they want. The judge said any number you want, but it has to be at least $1 because they can't reach punitives unless they do that. So that's my guess. That's my guess. That's what's happening is that they found punitive damages. It could be that they just found all the elements of defamation and then left both compensatory and punitive blank. That's possible. But it just seems to me like the judge would have said, you know, you need to fill out compensatory, and if appropriate, you need to fill out punitive damages. You may have missed this page at the end. Basically, she would have said that. She didn't say that you missed this page at the end, so I'm thinking they need to fill out the compensatory. She told the attorneys not to go far, and my guess is because she thinks they may well write down $1 and walk back in the courtroom in just a minute. So we'll stay live in case they do. Unbelievably stressful because we almost knew the answer at 3 o'clock, and then we did not find out what the answer was. We still do not know what the answer was. We are waiting for the Depp v. Heard verdict. It was supposed to be read at 3 o'clock. If you're just coming into the live, what happened was really strange. I was shocked. The jury came back in, handed its verdict form to, and that's possible they tried to award $0 in damages. Somebody put that in the chat, maybe. So it's possible that they handed that jury verdict form to the judge, and whatever it was, they found defamation. Apparently they did find one party defamed the other, but they left a blank for compensatory damages. They can't do that. If they find defamation, they have to write at least $1 in for compensatory damages. So she sent them back out. Now, what we don't know and what I'm speculating about is whether they filled out punitive damages. Whether they filled out punitive damages, left compensatory blank, and now what we're waiting for is the compensatory. One of the things about punitive damages is they aren't awarded unless there's an underlying compensatory damages claim. You can't just sue for punitive damages. They have to be derivative from something else that's happened. And in fact, the Supreme Court has suggested, it's not clear, but there's an argument by lawyers that the most punitive damages you can have is 10 times the underlying verdict. I think that's wrong. I don't think that's correct. But It will certainly be interesting and will be an appeal issue if they have $1 on compensatory and have a big mega verdict on punitive damages. That's going to be a real question on appeal. So that'll be something that we'll be looking for. Right now, we are still waiting because the jury came in, the excitement reached fever pitch, and then the jury left. Unbelievable. Apparently, they had not filled out, and I'm saying this again because we have a lot of people coming into the chat, but we have a lot of people who are just finding out. The jury came in, was about to read its verdict, and they left a piece blank. They left compensatory damages blank. Now, there would be no reason to fill out the form for compensatory damages unless they found defamation. Was it Johnny Depp defaming Amber Heard? Amber Heard defaming Johnny Depp? We don't know that. But they must have found that one of the parties or the other defamed the other. So that has to be what happened. And so we are just now stuck waiting and wondering what on earth the jury found. We don't even know whether the parties know yet, whether the parties have found out just by seeing the verdict and the blank. The judge called the lawyers up to the front and said, I need to talk to you about something. They talked for a while instead of reading the verdict, and that's when the judge announced that the jury would need to go back out and put at least $1 in for compensatory damages. So we are waiting to find that out. The judge recommended that nobody go anywhere fast. I think her thought was the jury might well write down $1 and then come back in. So we will find out what that means. But somebody actually won the case. One of the possibilities was that nobody would win. That the jury would say, a pox on both your houses, as they say. You know, poor behavior by everyone. No defamation here, no defamation here, $0, $0, and you both go home. That was a possibility that could happen, but it sounds like that is not what happened here. That in fact, the jury came back for somebody, either for Johnny Depp or for Amber Heard. Now we know they were working, from their question yesterday, we know they were working their way through the very detailed verdict form that the judge had given them to fill out. And we know that they were on at least part 3 for Johnny Depp on one of the statements. Now, that was a really important statement because I did a video on this. Some of you may have seen that. The video talked about the fact that the jury asked on one of the allegations, one of the statements that Amber Heard made. In fact, it was the title of the Washington Post op-ed. And the jury asked, are we supposed to just look at this title to see if that title is false, or are we supposed to look at the entire op-ed to see whether it was false? That at least seemed to be the question that they were asking. If so, that means that they were leaning toward maybe the title was defamation, but they didn't see the entire article as defamation. Remember, Amber Heard made this argument that she was entitled to protection under the First Amendment, and that the protection under the First Amendment allowed her to say the things she said in the op-ed. So maybe the jury was thinking, well, that title wasn't free speech. That was really specific, and it was false. One of the reasons they would think it was false is that it accused Johnny of SV. I'll have to throw that in again. It's sexual, and V rhymes with silent, so SV. So it could be that what they were thinking was that since this allegation of SV was kind of new by Amber, it didn't come out until the title of the op-ed, and then she didn't mention it again or before to anyone until Johnny Depp filed this lawsuit. And so that was a weak point for Amber's case, is that wasn't mentioned ever before. So it could be that what the jury, we know the jury was working its way through Johnny Depp's side. Now, we don't know what they were doing on Amber Heard because there weren't any clues. There were no questions that got sent out from the jury room. And mega pain. Yes, I see what you mean. This is very tense. Yes, I really feel you, everybody in the chat. I am really tense too. I cannot believe that they missed that one blank, and now we are all waiting to find out what the verdict will be. So We still don't know. It was supposed to come in at 3, and we didn't find out. We will have to wait. I'm going to stay on with you for a while. Let's see if they come back, because the judge told everybody, stick around. She didn't think it was going to be long. She thought they already had their minds made up and it was just a question of filling out the form. She told them they could even put $1. If they wanted to just put $1 in as compensatory damages, that was fine with her. So, and for those of you who are newer to the chat, we went through the really detailed verdict form. I even have a video on that if you want to learn any more about it. The verdict form was extremely detailed. The judge broke out every element of the claim legally. I believe the reason she likely was doing that is because she wants to try to protect this from an appeal. She wants to try to make it appeal proof by proving that the jury looked at every single solitary piece before they made their decision. Like, not just was it false, that's the big issue, right? But also, was it about Mr. Depp? Was it made or published by Ms. Heard? Did it have a defamatory implication? All of those questions, and that's just 4 of the 6, all of those have to be answered separately by the jury for every single alleged defamatory statement. And that was true for Johnny Depp's side and for Amber Heard's side. So the jury had a lot of work to do. There have been people saying, well, why did the jury take so long? And I certainly understand that from a feeling like, why are you not getting it done? But the truth is, given how complicated that verdict form was and how much evidence the judge sent out with them, it's not at all surprising it took this long. They obviously didn't go back to all the evidence. That would have taken quite some time, but they spent a substantial amount of time. Now, I don't think it would have been possible for them to have looked at every piece of evidence, but they had to have looked at a lot. They had to have really thought through it, and just from the verdict form, they have to have considered every detail of the law. Those are things that I think are going to help the case when it comes to an appeal, to make it less likely that it will be appealed. Now, I do think that the case is likely to be appealed. That's because it's so, well, I'll say this. If there is a verdict of substantial proportions for either side, then I think it's likely to be appealed. And this judge has run as tight a ship as she conceivably could. Oh, we're back in the courtroom. Oh, they don't have the sound on yet, but they are back in the courtroom. So, all right, well, we're waiting. We're going to hear the audio, and on the first round, we had good reception on the audio, so hopefully we'll get the same. Nobody knows the jurors. We don't get to see the jurors, and we don't know their names. That's by court order. And the court order, toward the end of the trial, the court extended it for an entire year after the trial. So those jurors' names will not be released for a whole year. I think she's hoping maybe the sensationalism will die down, and if the jurors don't wish to be contacted, they don't have to. But I guarantee you some of those jurors are going to be on the news tonight. They're going to be talking to the media. They're going to be talking. Not all of them, and some of them want their privacy, and the judge wants to give it to them. So we don't get anything, we don't get to know anything about them. And for some of you who saw the thumbnail, I did that because it's a jury. In fact, this jury, which has 7 people on it, we don't get to know who they are. So we will hear their verdict, but we won't get to know who they are. Right now, we are still waiting. They're back. I'm not seeing it on my feed. I do see that the feed is moved to the courtroom, so that's a good sign, but it isn't live right now. I'll make sure there's nothing I'm missing.
So this morning, I log into my intro.
Oh, you're getting my ad. Okay, so we'll skip the ads, make sure they're, nope, it's still frozen. So they're back in the courtroom, but I don't think that it's known yet. I know it's not known yet. Okay, well, they're back live. People are moving. Well, I think, and the lawyers are talking. I have to tell you, I don't think Camille looks very happy. I don't know. I'm trying to look at some of the body language of the people. And I would describe Camille as not looking happy. Now, Johnny Depp is not here. That was something that the Johnny Depp's team asked specifically. Could their client not come? Okay, everybody standing up. All right. Hopefully this is it. All right. All right. So we are waiting for the jury to come back in again. Hopefully this time the compensatory damages line is filled in. Okay. People standing up, everybody as nervous as you can get. Trust me, I have been there. That is unbelievably tense. All right, we are waiting. Jury is filing in right now. Right now. All right. There you go. Amber Heard is fiddling with her necklace. She does not look happy. No one looks happy. I'm not reading anything from happiness here. Elaine Bredehoff, Amber's attorney, looks very upset, actually. Really upset. So does Ben Rotenborn, her other attorney. It's so unfair, actually.
Mr. Foreperson, is this the
Okay.
verdict of the jury?
Here we go.
All right, is it unanimous?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Jamie?
All right. So the jury has said it's unanimous, which it had to be.
In civil case number CL 2019-2911, Mr. Depp's claim against Ms. Heard. 1. As to the statement appearing in the online op-ed entitled, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. In the Washington Post online edition, quote, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath.
This is
That has
Depp's
to
best
change.
claim. The
End
best
quote.
claim.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
Depp wins
Has Mr. Depp
on
proven
that.
by a greater weight of the evidence that question, the statement was made or published
This is
by
burden of
Ms.
proof.
Heard? Answer, yes.
Burden of proof
The
met.
question, the statement was about Mr. Depp. Answer, yes.
Okay.
Question, the statement was false. Answer, yes.
Oh, wow.
Question, the statement has a defamatory implication about Mr. Depp. Answer, yes.
Okay.
Question, the defamatory implication was designed and intended by Ms. Heard. Answer, yes.
Wow.
Question,
Wow.
due to circumstances surrounding the publication of the statement, it conveyed a defamatory implication to someone who saw it other than Mr. Depp. Answer, yes.
Okay, that's
Do you
huge.
find
Johnny
that Mr.
Depp
Depp has
wins
proven
that
by clear
claim.
and convincing evidence that Ms. Heard acted with actual malice? Answer, yes.
Wow.
2. As to the statement appearing in the op-ed entitled A Transformative Moment for Women in the Washington Post print edition and the online op-ed, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. In the Washington Post online edition. Quote, then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out, end quote. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
Oh,
Has Mr. Depp
wow.
proven by a greater weight of the evidence
Wow.
that question, the statement was made or published by Ms. Heard? Answer, yes.
Oh, wow.
Question, the statement was
He
about
won
Mr.
both
Depp.
of those.
Answer, yes. Question, the statement was false. Answer, yes. Question, the statement has a defamatory implication about Mr. Depp. Answer, yes. Question, the defamatory implication was designed and intended by Ms. Heard.
Wow.
Answer, yes. Question, due to circumstances surrounding the publication of the statement, it conveyed a defamatory implication to someone who saw it other than Mr. Depp? Answer, yes.
That is a big one
Do you
because
find
that
that
one
Mr.
was harder
Depp
than
has
the first
proven
one.
by clear and convincing evidence that Ms. Heard acted with actual malice? Answer, yes.
Juan, the second one too. Two of
Three.
the three so far.
As to
Let's
the
hear the
statement
third.
appearing in the op-ed entitled "A Transformative Moment for Women" in the Washington Post print edition and the online op-ed, Amber Heard, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. In the Washington Post online edition. Quote, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. End quote. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
Oh, wow.
Has Mr.
a
Depp proven
clean
by a greater
sweep.
weight of the
A
evidence
clean sweep. He
that
won all
question,
three.
the statement was
All
made
three.
or published by Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, the statement
Wow.
was about Mr. Depp?
Wow.
Answer, yes. Question, the statement
Wow.
was false? Answer, yes.
And-
Question, the statement has a defamatory implication about Mr. Depp?
Yeah.
Answer, yes.
Wow. Clean sweep for Johnny
Question,
Depp.
the defamatory
Clean
implication
sweep. All
was
three.
designed and intended by Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, due to circumstances surrounding the publication of this statement, it conveyed a defamatory implication to someone who saw it other than Mr. Depp? Answer, yes. Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven by clear and convincing evidence that Ms. Heard acted with actual malice? Answer, yes.
Wow. And actual malice. Do you have any idea how hard
As
that is?
against
That's
Amber
so
Heard,
hard.
we, the jury, award compensatory damages in the amount of
Okay, here we
$10
go.
million. As against Amber Heard, we, the jury, award punitive damages in the amount of $5 million.
Oh my gosh. $15
In
million
civil case number
against Amber.
CL
$15 million.
2019-2911,
15
Ms.
million.
Heard's claim
15
against
million
Mr.
against
Depp.
Amber.
1. As to this statement, appearing in the April 8, 2020 online edition of the Daily Mail, quote, Amber Heard and her friends in the media use fake sexual violence allegations as both a sword and shield, depending on their needs. They have selected some of her sexual violence hoax facts as the sword, inflicting them on the public and Mr. Depp. Do you find that Ms. Heard has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, no.
Amber Heard loses
2.
on her first of the
As to
three.
this statement appearing in the April 27, 2020 online edition of the Daily Mail, quote, quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops.
This is
But the
Depp's
first
hardest
attempt
one
did not
right
do
here.
the trick. The officers came to the penthouses, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damage to face or property. So Amber and her friends
This one
spilled a
is
little wine
stressful.
and roughed the place up, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, and then placed a second call to 911, end quote. Do you find that Ms. Heard has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes. Has Ms. Heard proven by a greater weight
I
of the
told you it's the
evidence
hardest one for him.
that question, Mr. Waldman,
Hardest
while
one for him.
acting as an agent for Mr. Depp, made or published the statement?
She wins
Answer,
too.
yes. Question, the statement was about Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, the statement was seen by someone other than Ms. Heard? Answer, yes. Question, the statement was false? Answer, yes.
Okay, so she wins
Do you
too.
find that Ms. Heard has proven
Let's see,
by
Stander.
clear and convincing evidence that the statement by Mr. Waldman was made with actual malice? Answer, yes.
Okay.
3.
So Johnny
As
Depp
to this
loses
statement,
two.
appearing in the April 27th, 2020 online edition of the Daily Mail, quote, we've reached the beginning of the end of Ms. Heard's abuse hoax against Johnny Depp.
I don't
end
think
quote.
they'll find this one.
Do you find that Ms. Heard has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, no.
Okay, no. She loses that one. She
As
won
against
one.
John C. Depp II,
Okay, let's see the
we, the
damages.
jury, award compensatory damages in the amount of $2 million. As against John C. Depp II, we, the jury, award punitive damages in the amount of $0.
Wow.
Does either side wish to have the jury polled?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, Amber
Jamie?
Heard's asking for a jury poll. That's where you
Members
ask
of the
each juror
jury,
if
if
they
this is
agree.
your verdict, please answer yes. If this is not your verdict, please answer no. Juror number 6.
Yes.
Juror number 10.
Yes.
Juror number 15.
Yes.
Juror number 16.
Yes.
Juror number 22.
Yes.
Juror number 27. Juror number 29.
Yes.
All right, I do find that the jury's verdict is unanimous. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes your service in this case. I want to thank you again for your dedication and your
Wow.
hard work during this trial. And I know I
Wow.
speak for everybody here when I tell you that we appreciate your sacrifices and your time and your public service in this matter, okay? So I'm
Okay,
going to have
we're
you go
gonna
back to the
talk
jury
about what just
deliberation
happened.
room for one more time, and then we'll release you from there, okay? All right, thank you.
Okay. So what we are seeing then is, and I'll go ahead and turn the feed off, both sides have found to have defamed the other. Johnny Depp won on all three of his statements. One of them was particularly hard for Johnny Depp. Won all three. All three were defamation by Amber Heard. Let's see if the judge says anything more on it.
In accordance with law, I will amend the punitive damages award to the statutory cap of $350,000 on Mr. Depp's
That's why they
award,
asked for
okay?
350 then.
I will set this down for entry of an order, and can we do it on June 24th at 10 a.m. if that's available? All right,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chu, if you could prepare that order and then circulate it to Ms. Bretterhoff, and we can have all the objections noted on it. All right?
We'll do that, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
All right, and if I get it before that date, I'll take it off the docket, okay? All right, again, thank you to all the attorneys for your professionalism, and you're welcome to come to my courtroom anytime. Well, give me a few weeks, but then you can come anytime, okay? All right.
Yeah.
Court is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so here's what happened. The jury is finally back, if you're just tuning in. Here's what happened. Johnny Depp had 3 statements he said were defamation by Amber Heard. He won all 3 statements, all 3. Even the detailed questions the judge had them fill out, all 6 individual answers, answering whether it was actual malice, he won all of those, won all of them. And on all 3 statements that were made, even the really hardest one of all, he won on. The compensatory damages that were awarded were $10 million to Johnny Depp, owed from Amber Heard to Johnny Depp, and $5 million in punitive damages. However, the judge is reducing that amount to $350,000 because there's a cap on punitive damages, I presume, in Virginia. Now, on the other hand, the jury also found that Johnny Depp's attorney, Alan Waldman, defamed Amber Heard and that he was acting as Johnny's agent when he did so. So they also awarded damages from Johnny Depp to Amber Heard. Now, the compensatory damages to Amber Heard were $2 million and $0 of punitive damages. So the net is $8,350,000 up for Johnny. And so Amber Heard is now out or has a judgment against her for $8,350,000. The judgment may not be payable. From what I understand, she doesn't have that much money, and I don't know what will happen. There's been speculation about whether Johnny Depp would ask that it be given to charity or what he would do with that, or whether he would just tell her she didn't have to pay it. We don't really know. Maybe, in fact, if he doesn't really need the money, he could just ask that she not appeal it. And if she would agree not to appeal it, then he'll say, okay, you don't have to pay that amount of money. That actually might be a pretty good result. Come to think of it, as a mediator, I may recommend that to them. That would be a pretty good result for everybody involved, and it would mean the case didn't have to be tried again. Now, with Amber Heard, she had 3 statements that she was claiming were defamation by Johnny Depp. Those 3 statements 2 of them she lost. Only 1 of them did she win. So let's go over what was the one she won. Let's start with the 2 she didn't win. I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. The jury said, that we don't believe that was, I'm sorry. I'm reading from Johnny Depp's. Y'all were probably confused. Why would she have said that? Okay, here's what Amber Heard said. She did not win on Alan Waldman's statement about using fake SV allegations. The jury thought clearly from what they found in the Johnny Depp side of the case that the SV allegations were false. That was a hoax. That she made that up only after she needed to defend the title to the Washington Post op-ed. She had never said anything about SV up until the time that the Washington Post op-ed. It was in the title, and from that point on, and shortly after that, Johnny sued her, and then, and only then, did she first mention that there had ever been an SV allegation. Clearly, the jury did not buy that. They did not think that there was any valid reason for believing SV had happened. Clearly, they answered no on that, and in fact, when it came time for Amber Heard to say that was when you said I made it all up, that was, as far as SV, she lost on that. That was not defamation. They did not find it met the elements of defamation. Her second statement was, and even as we were reading it, I said, this is the hardest part. And this was the hardest part. I'll read it to you and talk about why I think Johnny Depp lost this part that he did lose. For those of you who are just coming in, Johnny Depp won more than he lost. So I'll go over that again in just a minute. But let me talk about what he did lose so you can understand it. The statement was by Alan Waldman to the Daily Mail on April 27th, 2020. And here's what Alan Waldman, Johnny Depp's attorney, said. He said, quite simply, this was an ambush, a hoax. They set Mr. Depp up by calling the cops, but the first attempt didn't do the trick. The officers came to the penthouses, thoroughly searched and interviewed, and left after seeing no damage to face or property. So Amber and her friends spilled a little wine and roughed the place up, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, and then placed a second call to 911. Now, the problem with that is that Johnny Depp just didn't offer any proof around that. There was apparently some proof. I don't know if it wasn't admitted or if they just didn't bring the right people, but there was apparently some proof out there that Amber and her friends had made the second call to 911. There's a call on the internet, an audio call that's supposedly by Rocky Pennington, Amber Heard's friend, in which she sounds frankly not particularly upset, and she says, yeah, there's somebody being hurt, and she called me, so you should go check, and her name is Amber. And that's about what happened. So that's where, I guess, Alan Waldman got that. But Johnny Depp just really didn't bring any proof that Amber and her friends had spilled a little wine, roughed the place up, and gotten their story straight, and then placed a second call. There may have been that proof. He didn't bring it here to the trial. And in fact, when you saw the body cam of the second set of officers coming in, it really didn't look like the place was all that messed up or that anyone was that hysterical, and it looked like Amber Heard turned them away and said, she didn't want to do anything in particular. So that's what he lost on. That's the one he lost on. But the jury only awarded $2 million. I say only, that's a lot of money. But I say only relative to what they awarded to Johnny Depp. So that was the one place where the jury said, we believe that there was an unfair statement here. We do believe that this was defamation by Alan Waldman. And that Johnny Depp's responsible for it. They had to find that. They had to find that he was acting as the agent. So then the third statement was, we have reached the beginning of the end of Miss Heard's abuse hoax against Johnny Depp. And the jury said, you know what? We believe that. That was the beginning of the end because this was an abuse hoax, at least as far as the SV violations went. So the jury did not rule with Amber Heard on the defamation there. Total amount awarded to her was $2 million from Johnny Depp to Amber Heard with $0 in punitive damages. So that $0 means that there are no punitives. The judge didn't have to reduce it to the cap under Virginia law. So now let's take a look at what Johnny Depp won, because Johnny Depp won more than what Amber Heard did. So let's take a look. He also, just like Amber Heard, had 3 statements that he was saying were defamation. In his case, they were statements made in the op-ed that Amber Heard published in the Washington Post. Part of it online, part of it online and in paper. So Johnny won all 3 of his statements, a clean sweep. I saw somebody ask the question, well, what exactly, is that common, a clean sweep? And to be honest, it just depends on the allegations. But here, I thought one of them in particular was really hard for him, and he won anyway. And we know for a fact that the jury was being very careful because of the fact that they looked so carefully at Amber Heard's that although there were 3, they picked 1 and not all 3. So we know for a fact they were looking very specifically at every question the judge had asked them. They were not just glossing over it or doing something, quickly just to get it over with. None of that. They were being very specific. So the first thing was Johnny Depp's, the statement that Amber Heard made, I spoke up against SV and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. That was, I thought, Johnny Depp's best possible argument because of the fact that the SV allegations came so late in the game. They didn't come until after the first time she told anybody there had ever been SV was after Johnny sued her, if you don't count the title. Now, her defense was, I didn't even write the title. Worked with the ACLU writing that whole op-ed, but I didn't write the title. Blame the Washington Post. It's their fault. They put the title on, and I didn't have anything to do with that. The problem was she retweeted that post. So she took that post, sent it out to all of her followers, and that post, then the jury has concluded, became adopted by her. She accepted it, and she accepted the title too. And in fact, if you looked at her Twitter post, it had the title right there on the post. So it was definitely right there. The jury found that Johnny Depp had proven that that was defamation. And one of the ways that's important, notice it doesn't even mention Johnny Depp. It says, I spoke up against SV, doesn't mention him. But the jury moved right past that, as I think it was very fair to do, because in the op-ed she said 2 years ago, and she referred to this abuse she had been through. Everybody knew that was Johnny Depp. Everybody knew Johnny Depp was the person she had been married to and the person she had accused of abuse. So that was pretty clear that it was going to be something where I thought where they would say, yes, this meant Johnny Depp. Everybody knew this was about Johnny Depp. So they answered all of those detailed questions that the judge gave them, and they concluded Johnny Depp had in fact proven all of the elements of defamation there. The second statement was, then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. And the jury went with that too. Every single element written out there. Yes, they believed that was abuse. Now that is especially interesting or important because you may remember in closing argument, Amber's side argued, that was anything you do could be abuse. Like, for example, it doesn't have to be somebody hitting somebody. It could also be someone psychologically doing that. It could be someone emotionally doing that. It could be taking somebody's closet and tearing it apart by throwing the racks down the stairs, which Johnny, there were pictures of Johnny having done that. So the jury didn't buy it. The jury said, looking at the weight of the evidence, we don't believe it was accurate, or we believe it was defamation against Johnny Depp to say you were a public figure representing domestic abuse. Probably, very logically, a reason they would think that is because Amber was heavily involved in any sort of hitting or any fights that they were having. We heard that over and over again. In fact, she was the only one who admitted on any of the audio tapes to hitting the other. So that, no doubt, is why the judge went with that. Now, the third statement was maybe a little bit harder. I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. So as far somebody said that Amber Heard tweeted about the verdict, claiming it was a defeat for freedom of speech. I haven't seen that yet. That sounds very interesting. And that will no doubt be the grounds of their appeal. I'll get to that in just a minute. I'll write it down so I don't forget. So the third statement was, I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of abuse. Again, the jury went with Johnny Depp on this. All of those questions, 6 questions underneath, answered yes. Also found that it was the right standard, both met clear and convincing evidence and actual malice. Actual malice is a very high standard. It's only used for defamation cases where there are public figures involved. And the idea is these are public figures, so you have a little more leeway to talk about them. And therefore, it's not defamation until you reach the level of actual malice. That's what the finding was here. They found that in this case, on all 3 of those statements, Amber Heard proved by clear and convincing evidence, and Amber Heard was proven by clear and convincing evidence to have acted with actual malice. So that is a huge, huge finding here. And the jury awarded far more damages to Johnny Depp than to Amber Heard. The compensatory damages for Johnny Depp were $10 million, and the punitives they awarded were $5 million, for a total of $15 million in an award from the jury. The judge then took that punitive damages and reduced it to $350,000. The reason for that is that there's a cap on punitive damages under Virginia law. Now, my opinion, they ought to tell the jury that, but the law is that they don't tell the jury that. So the jury writes down a number thinking they're giving something. So, we know that one or more of these were blank on compensatory damages, and because of the fact that she sent the jury back out. So which one or both? It's very curious. Like, did they write down punitives 5 million, punitive 0, and that was all they were going to do? And then both compensatory damages were blank, and then they went back out, deliberated real fast, and came back in? Or, how did they do that? You just wonder. The judge sent them back out. If you were here waiting with us, it was really stressful because we were all on waiting for the jury's verdict at 3 o'clock. It was supposed to come right in at 3. Jury comes in, could cut the tension with a knife, and the judge has their verdict form, and she calls the lawyers up, has a conference with them, and then she sends the jury back out and informs them they have to fill out compensatory damages with at least $1, at least. And so they have to put something in compensatory damages. So that means when they first came out, it either didn't say 10 million, or it didn't say 2 million, or maybe it didn't say either one, which is crazy because those are the larger numbers of them. So that's really a surprise. I wonder how that happened exactly. So I want to talk about, some of you saw the jury poll. You may have been wondering, what was that about? Why did Amber Heard's team want the jury polled? When a jury comes back with a verdict, the losing party has the right to have every single juror polled to see if it's their verdict. I am sure that at some point in history, there has been some jury where somebody stood up and said, okay, no, not me. I actually didn't mean that. They forced me into it. That has happened somewhere sometime, but it is really rare. So in this particular case, that isn't what happened. Now, and somebody asked me too about, I wanted to talk about appeal. And I wanted to talk about the fact that there will probably be an appeal unless the parties can reach a settlement. And that would be my recommendation. If anybody asks me, I'm also a mediator. And I would say, y'all need to resolve this. This has already been a huge drain on a bunch of people's time, a lot of people, and you need to resolve this. So they've got some numbers now. I think Johnny Depp has gotten what he wanted. He got vindication. All of those 3 things were said to be defamation, unlike what happened in the UK. Very different result, very different. It was defamation to say she represented domestic abuse. It was defamation to say she was a victim of SV and to imply that it was from Johnny Depp. All of those things were found to be defamation. That is a huge finding because that finding shows us that the jury believed Johnny Depp and not Amber Heard. There was the statement by Alan Wallman that just went too far. If Johnny Depp's team had brought any proof at all that that actually happened, you can tell from the numbers that the jury didn't really want to go with Amber. But Johnny's team didn't bring anything to support that claim by Alan Wallman. They didn't bring anything to suggest that Amber, let me find that exact statement. The statement was that Amber and her friends spilled a little wine and roughed the place up, got their story straight under the direction of a lawyer and publicist, and then placed a second call to 911. There was just no evidence brought in about that. Nobody came in and said, yes, this is what happened. There was nothing. And so I think the jury probably felt forced to find that there was, in fact, something there. That there, and it may just be on Amber's side that the compensatory was blank. That could be. Now, notice that the compensatory for Johnny, $10 million, that's way less than he was requesting. His initial demand in the complaint was for $50 million. Amber Heard's was for $100 million. But the $50 million was bolstered by the statement and testimony that he lost a $22.5 million contract for Pirate 6. Apparently, the jury did not believe the loss of Pirate 6 was entirely due to Amber Heard's op-ed. They may have believed it came from other sources too. They may have believed it came from his own conduct. There was testimony that he was late all the time, that he became more difficult to work with, not temperament-wise, but I just mean it became difficult to get him scheduled and coming, and so as a result, people didn't like working with him. His ex-agent testified to that, so perhaps the jury concluded that, and perhaps that's why they came up with the compensatory of $10 million. The net to Amber, or the net loss for Amber Heard today is $8,350,000. So that comes from the fact that there was a $10 million compensatory damages and a $5 million punitive damages against Johnny Depp, but that was, for Johnny Depp against Amber Heard, but that was reduced to $350,000, the punitives portion was. So then that would be offset against Amber Heard's counterclaim award of $2 million. Now, if this case goes up on appeal, it's possible that only one party could argue it. It's possible that only one party could appeal. What's likely is that if one party appeals, the other side will also bring some of the things that it thought were wrongfully done. It will bring some of the things that were defamation or that were errors in the case. Were there errors in the case? It would literally be impossible to try a 6-week trial like this and not have something that an appellate court thought was an error. But I will tell you what, this judge has been absolutely remarkable. When we came in, I had a slightly negative impression. She seemed a bit biased one way. I have watched 6 weeks of trial. I don't see that at all. She ran as tight a courtroom and as orderly a courtroom as I've ever seen. It was really well done. Under no circumstances is the appellate court going to want to overturn this. You talk about a problem case to retry because so much is out in the public now about it. Nobody is going to want to overturn it, and they will all be tipping their hats to Judge Azarcardi because she was truly remarkable. What she did was absolutely incredible. I don't think there are many judges in the country who could have done as good a job with such a complex, such a busy case. So we're talking about the verdict, which is in. If you're just coming into the live, it was a shocker. Both sides won, but Johnny won a lot more than Amber Heard did. Now, it's possible that the reason for that is because they felt like Amber Heard didn't really prove she had lost very much. And that's why they only gave her $2 million in compensatory compared to Johnny Depp's $10 million. His losses were greater because his career was greater. And a reason for believing that is the fact that Amber Heard actually there was testimony that Amber Heard, in fact, got her Aquaman role, and she didn't lose it. And Amber Heard, got various things. She continued with L'Oreal, even if her she claimed her role was reduced, but there was no real evidence of that. In fact, she still worked for L'Oreal. So all of those things added up to a suggestion that maybe Amber Heard still kept most of what she had and she didn't lose a lot. The thing undermining that is that apparently the jury left one of the compensatory damages blanks blank. They didn't fill it out. When they first came back to give us the verdict and all the tension was there and the excitement, the judge had to send them back out telling them you can't leave it blank for compensatory damages. You have to put at least $1. So that really puzzles me because they went from nothing written there to 10 million in Johnny Depp and 2 million in Amber Heard. We don't know which or if it was both blanks that were left out. We just don't know. And that's just that's truly astonishing. So I want to get to some of your questions and stuff. I'm going to be taking a look. I got to pull up the feed here because if I hit my phone, it'll make me shake and you won't be able to see me. So let's pull up the feed. I'm good. Okay. All right. So, well, it's good to have you on board. What a day. We are talking about the jury finally back in the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. This has been a long time coming. We are absolutely, we have really been waiting for this. The jury clearly believing Johnny Depp a lot more than it believed Amber Heard. He got a clean sweep. All three of the statements he said were defamation. The jury agreed. Amber Heard won one of the three. And the jury gave a lot more money to Johnny Depp than it did to Amber Heard, to the tune of $8,350,000 more. And it gave Johnny punitive damages. I would love to have been a fly on the wall when Johnny's lawyers called and told him about the verdict. Oh, he was probably watching live, like we all were, right? So he was probably watching live and knew it at the time. I do think it's a shame he wasn't present for the reading of the verdict. I know he seems like a kind of shy person, and that was probably very stressful for him. But, I still think it would have been much better. He brought the case, and I think he just needed to be there to see it home. My personal opinion. But, he won and was successful in it. Amber Heard was there. She heard the verdict, and you could see the visible, very upset reaction for her. Now, I'm seeing some questions in the about who will pay the... Okay, let's see if this will open up the chat. I'm not seeing your questions. I did see one about who's going to pay. Well, the only person against whom the award was awarded is the person who pays. So the only person who could pay Johnny Depp is Amber Heard. Now, does she have $10,350,000? I don't think so. I don't think she has that much money. So bottom line is he's not getting $10,350,000. We'll see what he does. I would say y'all ought to settle it. You ought to settle this case, and you ought to, she can pay some money to Johnny Depp. It's a net of $8,350,000, which she also doesn't have from what I read about her net worth, which I saw is about $7 million. She's also out $6 million in attorney's fees. Her attorneys testified in closing argument. The reason I say testified is they shouldn't have made that. It wasn't testified to at trial, but they said it anyway. They said it in opening and in closing. And I think they were trying to get the jury to soften any blow by saying, look, come on, she's already been punished. She's already lost a lot. Give her a break. Don't award any more. But the jury didn't buy it. They awarded $10 million. And then on top of that, $5 million in punitive damages. So they clearly were not buying her side of the story. For Johnny Depp, of course, he probably would be good for the money, but he has a net of owing nothing. So I don't think he would have to make any payment. And somebody asked me about the British courts. That is a great question. Could there be something that would allow Johnny Depp to go back to the court and say, look, you messed up. The American jury said I wasn't responsible. The answer is, unfortunately, no. That is not something that can happen. The jury's verdict here has no precedent, no binding value in the UK. It's irrelevant. So there is nothing about this that makes the case gives him a chance to open up the case. It is also, there were things that we can pretty much guess that the UK court just got wrong. There were pieces of evidence that were in the UK case that weren't in this one, and vice versa. One of the places where the UK court clearly was misled, it seems to me, is that there was a statement by the judge in his findings that Amber Heard wouldn't be the kind of person who would make this up, because after all, she wasn't a gold digger since she gave all of her money to charity. All of her divorce settlement, $7 million, she gave to charity. Well, the judge thought that because Amber Heard had said she did that. In a declaration in the UK court, she said, I gave all my money to charity. Past tense, gave it. In fact, though, that was not the case. She still has not given all of that money to charity. In fact, she's given less than $1 million of the 7 to charity. I did a whole video on that because I thought it was a very important point. But particularly because she had told the UK court, as well as a Dutch TV show, she made the statement openly, publicly, yes, I gave it all. Past tense, overdone, and it was false. So without question, the UK court finding was just incorrect. They believed what Amber Heard said in her declaration, but Johnny's team brought new information here to this trial that shows that Amber Heard, in fact, had not given the money. That wasn't available in the UK trial, so the judge didn't know about that, and he reached the wrong impression as a result. But does that mean the case can be opened up? No, it doesn't. And Johnny Depp already lost his appeal over there, and at that time, they tried to get in some new evidence, and the court said no. Case is over, you lose. It was a different case anyway. It wasn't Johnny Depp against Amber Heard. It was Johnny Depp suing a newspaper, The Sun, because they had written an article claiming that he had beaten his wife. And so they said, you can't do that. We're not going to allow that. So he said, that's defamation against me, or in that it wouldn't be defamation in that case, but that he said that was wrong, that was false, you can't do that. And the UK court refused to overturn it. The finding by the lower court was the Sun newspaper wins. We're not going to consider that to be, he said most of what they said was proven true, and he made the statement about Amber Heard and the charity giving. It wasn't necessary that he made that finding, but it was one of the things he said convinced him. And now we know that it was simply false. So we do know that one of the things that convinced him was false, but it wasn't part of his finding. So I don't believe it will ever, be something that will, have anything to do with that. So I am trying to find the super chats and to thank you for them, and I am not finding them. I'm a fairly new YouTuber, so I don't really have it all down yet, and I apologize for that, but I am working on it. So I'm finally even seeing, at least the questions and so forth. So let's see, is there anybody with a question? Perjury. Good question, and I would say almost certainly not. First of all, there were a lot of times when, while one person would come forward and there would be some contradictory evidence, there wasn't hard and fast proof. The jury sometimes had to make a call. What do we think happened here? And so they had to do that in order to show that they were, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. So I think that there was enough contradiction in evidence that you probably wouldn't be able to prove perjury anyway. There are places where perjury could be proven. Like, okay, that was false, and now we have evidence that was just false. But it would just never happen that a prosecutor would take what happened in a civil case and a statement there and prosecute separately on that when it was between two private parties. I just can't see that ever happening. I don't see that ever being opened up. I think a more likely result is there's some kind of prickly settlement between the two in Johnny Depp's favor, and then, the two go on their way. And the settlement may well be something he gives to charity or something like that. And hopefully this time he'll make sure that it really goes to charity, since, in fact, it didn't really go to charity last time, at least not much of it. And I assume if Amber Heard couldn't pay it before, she really can't pay it now, because now she, in addition to not being able to pay it before, owes more than her net worth to Johnny Depp. She owes $8,350,000 to Johnny Depp net. For those of you who are just coming in, the award was $10 million in compensatory damages to Johnny Depp, $5 million in punitive damages, but that was reduced by the court under Virginia law to $350,000. And then the award to Amber Heard, who also won, was $2 million because one of the statements by Waldman was found to be false. And then the punitives award was $0. So the net is $8,350,000 to Johnny Depp, who unfortunately was not there to see it. Wouldn't you have loved to have seen his reaction? So his attorneys asked for permission for him not to be present. I thought it was a shame, but they did ask for permission. And so, that's what happened. So what happens to Camille Vasquez's career now? Well, first of all, I want to say this because I've been meaning to say this for a while. I feel very passionately about women attorneys and about women in careers. And because I've been there and I've done that. And apparently she was not up until now a partner. And I want to know, why not? Why was she not a partner? She's been practicing plenty of years to have been a partner. I am appalled that she was not a partner already. So should she be a partner? Yeah, she already should have been a partner. Like, what was that about? But she will have many career options open to her. She, of course, could continue on and be a litigator. She could do more trials. Lots of people would love to have her as their attorney, and she'll have a huge career there. But there is also the possibility that she'll do something outside that. Maybe something along the lines of what Nancy Grace has done, where she does commentary. Who knows? But she will, I think, she will do very well after this. She did a fantastic job. She was phenomenal at cross of Amber Heard and did extremely well in her closing argument. So she did really well. I do want to say, too, all of the attorneys were really good. I know that Elaine Bredehoff got some critique. I think it's hard to even express how difficult doing a trial like this is with all of the pressure and all of the media watching and everybody looking at you. It's very hard. And they all did a good job. Uniformly, top to bottom, these were top caliber lawyers who were doing the best that they could. Obviously, I do think Johnny Depp's team in the end did better. And I don't mean just with the case. I think they were really good lawyers, and I think they ultimately prevailed. They brought in so much evidence, so much critical good evidence, and that's what put it over the top. So someone asked, could she start her own firm? Camille, absolutely. Sure she could if she wanted to. What happens if Amber Heard can't pay it? So there are, there's no backup for that. There's no person who pays it. If Amber Heard can't pay it, then Johnny Depp either has to write it off. She may be able to go into bankruptcy. There are some laws, though, that prevent discharge of certain debts in bankruptcy. I don't know if defamation is one of the types that cannot be, that you can't discharge just by going into bankruptcy. In this case, she was found to have actual malice. And it may be that a claim with actual malice like that can't be discharged in bankruptcy. So I don't know the answer to that. She may owe Johnny Depp money for a long, long time. We'll see. Maybe he can garnish her wages from Aquaman. Who knows? Can she serve jail time to compensate? No, she can't. That's not something that she can do. There's no possibility that jail time comes from this. This was a civil case only. So there won't be any jail time for anyone as a result. Now, I'm going to try really hard. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to touch the screen to see this. I am not succeeding. What I wanted to do was look at the super chat so I could at least thank you. And I can't do it. I'm really sorry. That's what I get for being a new YouTuber. So I'm really grateful to have y'all along for the ride. It has been so much fun doing this case. And I'm going to be continuing to be a YouTuber. I love doing it. I've had so much fun. I love answering people's questions. I just find it really interesting and fun. So I am looking forward to that. I'm going to be doing a lot more cases. I know one of the ones I'm really interested in is the Gabby Petito civil case, which is going to be coming up. So please subscribe and stay along for the ride. We are, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be doing this on all kinds of cases and giving you commentary. Scamber, that is quite I'm impressed. That's a good word. Okay, so is Johnny's $5 million in punitives reduced to $350,000 by Virginia law? Yes, that's exactly right. The judge reduced it in accordance with Virginia law, which caps punitive damages at $350,000. And so the jury thought they were awarding him $5 million, but they didn't really get to do that because the law prevented that. You may well ask, why? Why? Oh, wait, I can actually see a chat. I've opened it. I'll go there. I saw one. Thank you. Okay. So I think that's how it'll turn out. So let's see what Pat's question is. Can her insurance company get their money back now that she has been found not credible? I did hear a rumor that an insurance company was paying for her defense, that a homeowner's insurance company was paying for her defense that related to defamation, that it covered defamation. I don't know if that's true for her or not. I don't know if she actually had a policy that covered that. There is such a thing that could be included. And so could she get it back? I would say no, that normally those include an actual provision for the insurance company to pay for the defense. That's part of it, is paying for the defense. That's part of what you paid for with your policy. So I don't think there would be anything that she would get back. She's not going to get that returned to her. She's not going to have to pay that back to the insurance company because it's not going to be something that they can recoup from her. I don't think that would be very likely. Now her attorney said she was out $6 million for attorney's fees. So that was an incorrect statement if in fact it was being paid by an insurance company. I saw that rumor, but I don't know. I don't know if that's the case or not. Self-insured retention. That is possible. It is possible that they did it with a retention. I don't know. I don't know anything about what her insurance policy was or what it covered. So I can't really answer that. But typically, if an insurance company pays for defense, they don't get their money back for that defense, even if you lose. Take a car wreck case, for example. If the insurance company pays for your defense, you were the defendant, and you lose the case, you don't have to pay them the attorney's fees back. So I would assume that she probably won't have to, but I don't know. Maybe they took it under a reservation of rights. I don't really know. But it's a great question. I'd heard that rumor as well. Is Musk paying her legal fees? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, like I say, she said she was out $6 million. So that was incorrect and false if, in fact, somebody else was paying for it. So that shouldn't have been said in closing argument anyway, because it was never in evidence in the case. It shouldn't have been said. Since it was, I hope it wasn't false on top of having been said improperly. But I don't know. So let's see, what other questions do they have? Why no mention of perjury? And again, I've answered that because there's just not going to be any perjury coming as a result of this. A jury verdict indicates that the jury found a certain way, believed certain witnesses, but it doesn't mean that they perjured themselves. That would have to be a criminal case filed separately. It would not be in this case, and it's extraordinarily unlikely that it would ever be a true perjury case brought against any of them. And somebody coming into the chat asking what happened. Yes, there was a total of $15 million awarded to Johnny Depp, $10 million in compensatory, and $5 in punitives. That was reduced to $350,000. And then on top of that, we had an award that Amber received from Johnny Depp of $2 million in compensatory. So the net, $8,350,000 going Johnny's way. So thank you very much, Gino, for the super chat. And can I cover the Cain Velasquez case next? I will have to look into that. That sounds interesting because I'm really looking for what to cover. So please, if you have some suggestions, put it in the chat because I would like to cover what interests y'all, what you find really interesting, and what you're curious about. What do you want to learn about? The purpose of the channel is the intersection of law and life, because so many times our lives do intersect with law, and that's what I want to talk about. So thank you very much, Gina, and I will look into that. I'm very interested in any recommendations y'all can give. Please do. And Pat asks, I've already answered that, and thank you, Pat, again for your super chat as well. So let's go back to some of the other questions, and which now that I finally got that to open, I don't know how to show the chat. I'm kidding. I've got this. I hope. All right. So and people are talking about Johnny Depp wasn't in it for the money. He said that over and over. He said he was not in it for the money, that he was in it because he wanted to get his name back. He said he wanted his reputation. Camille Vasquez said it beautifully in closing argument. And in fact, I don't know if you noticed, it was echoed almost word for word by Ben Chu next. So they really got their thing across. They said, we implore you. Do you remember that? We implore you. Give him his life, his career, give him his life back. And they talked about the damage early from the first witness. They were talking about the damage to Johnny Depp being how much his family had been damaged, how his family had to endure this, and they had to listen to what had been said about him, even though he said he knew it was false. And the jury says the same thing. The jury says, yes, indeed, all of these statements against Johnny Depp were defamation. It was false. So Johnny Depp clearly vindicated today. Clearly, this is a time when Johnny Depp can say, I now can show that I am vindicated, that the jury believed that I was specifically not guilty of SV, I wasn't guilty of domestic abuse. All of those statements about me were false. Huge, huge day for Johnny Depp. This is really important. So, there's people asking me about would she be stupid to appeal? No, she wouldn't be stupid to appeal. Is she likely to win? I'm going to say this. There is no case ever in the history of the world that has been tried for 6 solid weeks where you could not say that there was some grounds for appeal and some grounds to reverse it. You just can't try a case that long without something that an appellate court could disagree with. But all of the momentum is going to be against that here. Every incentive by the appellate court is to not grant the appeal because look at the amount of trouble it's been and the expense. I mean, can you imagine how expensive this trial was for Fairfax County? All of the officers they had to keep there, all of the people who had to be present to keep order in the courtroom, the deputies, all of the court personnel, and they had to constantly update their website with information about this case. It was just a circus in terms of all the people there, and they had to deal with that day in and day out. It was very expensive. And if you looked at Judge Azzocardi, she was amazing. The appellate court will hate to overturn this, but I guarantee you there are things that an appellate court could overturn it if they wanted to. That is just always the case. It's possible. I think, though, it's not. I think it's less likely because they know what a production this was. They will have to be very convinced that there was something so seriously wrong within the law side, the legal side, some piece of evidence we didn't get to see or did get to see. And I'll tell you another thing that will hurt the chances on appeal, and that's that the jury to some degree split the baby. Now, yeah, they went a lot more with Johnny than they did with Amber, but they still awarded damages on both sides. That shows that this is somebody being very careful, that this is somebody being extremely serious, the jury, being very serious about what exactly they were supposed to do. So, let's see, we're getting would there be anything that could, thank you very much for the super chat from I guess I'm saying that right. And he's asking, or he or she is asking about Amber's child. So some of the evidence in the trial, not just suggested, said, I agree with you, that Amber was unstable. There was testimony by Dr. Curry that she had borderline personality disorder, that she had numerous disorders that made her chaotic, that caused her to attack other people, and serious mental health charges about what she was like and what her problems were. But then the question is, would that be enough of a physical or moral danger to her child that something would happen, that something would need to be done? And the answer is no. That was testimony from one expert witness. It was not her treating physician. It was not someone associated with the state. In order to take her child away, there would have to be a separate proceeding for that. You couldn't just take her child away based on testimony in a civil case. Now, you could start a civil proceeding related to that particular question. Is she able and fit to care for her child? because we heard this, but there would have to be new experts. She would have to be examined. And, in this particular case, we had Dr. Curry for Johnny Depp on one side, but we also had Dr. Hughes for her on the other side saying she didn't have any of that. So I don't believe there will be any ramifications for her care for her child. There, perhaps if there were ever a question in the future, people would consider this and think about that, but I don't see any reason to think that that's an issue or that it will ever be pursued by anybody based on this trial. So, all right, and so let me go back to looking at the chat questions and see what else y'all are asking me. I'm curious. Let's see. People want to know. What do you want to know? If you want to know, be sure to put it and put question marks at the front so I can see it, because it's a lot easier to see if I have some questions in the front. So, will the ACLU do anything to Amber based on the outcome of this trial, seeing that no one believes her? Very interesting. One question I don't remember is Amber still an ambassador for the ACLU, or is that over? I'm not sure. But Amber Heard was an ambassador for the ACLU at least, and she testified that she owes them money, or pledged to give them money, and hadn't paid it yet. So we know that she hasn't paid in full. That was not a binding contract. They even mentioned sending her something, which I think he testified she didn't sign. So there was no binding contract. It was a statement she made publicly. It would be a commitment she made perhaps morally, but there wasn't a signed contract where she agreed to pay the ACLU X dollars and then she didn't. And if I were the ACLU, I certainly wouldn't pursue it. I certainly wouldn't do a breach of contract because of the fact that there would be too much surrounding that. Remember that the ACLU authored the op-ed. So I think they'd be wise to keep their heads down on this one and not get involved in any way. I doubt that they will ever get the money that she supposedly pledged to them. I don't think they'll ever get it, nor will the Children's Hospital in LA, because now she owes this money to Johnny Depp, and that is enforceable. That right there is a verdict, and if it's entered by the court, which I would expect it to be, then it will actually be owed. So I don't think there's going to be any question that she owes that amount of money. So they may settle the case, and Johnny Depp may say, I want that money to go to the ACLU and the Children's Hospital, but I don't see otherwise that they're ever going to get the money, because I doubt she's ever going to have that much money. I could be wrong. Maybe they will. So, if Johnny, and this is coming from Jake Meir, if Johnny Depp used his insurance to cover the legal fees, could his insurance company sue Amber? Or maybe is saying that maybe that could happen. I would be really surprised if Johnny Depp had insurance that covered this. And also, he had a very large legal team. So did Amber. They had huge legal teams. My guess is insurance wasn't covering this all the way. If it covered anything, it would have been a small portion. Typically, an insurance company can't recover its fees from either side at the end of the case, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't expect that. I wouldn't expect that there was insurance, but we will see, because that's an interesting point that you raise as to whether or not they could recoup it back. Let me add one other thing. I don't think they could recoup it back in this case because of the fact that there was an award to Amber too. Granted, different case. So they could arguably recover it, but because in the case that they were, let's see. If Johnny Depp used insurance to cover his fees, he would have had to have used insurance to cover his fees defending against defamation, not prosecuting it, defending against it. And he lost one of the three. So I would say no. There's probably no chance that his insurance is going to be able to recover anything. So that would be my bet. All right, let me see if there's some more questions. If you're just coming into the chat, there was a victory today for Johnny Depp. Amber Heard also won some, but the net to Johnny Depp was $8,350,000. The jury's net would have been $13 million, but the judge reduced it because punitive damages are capped in Virginia. Okay. All right, so let's see what else. When do the damages have to be paid? Well, they would be due and owing when the judge enters the judgment, which will happen within a few days probably. There will be some final matters that people will bring up, but then the judge will enter the judgment, and it will be due and owing, but there will be the potential for an appeal. That delays things, but as of the moment she enters the judgment, interest might accrue. So that's the point at which it's technically due and owing, but probably will not be paid until final appeals and everything has been exhausted. So I wouldn't expect her to be paying any money right away. We'll have to, wait and kind of see what happens with that. All right, punitive damages, yes, capped, that's right. They were capped and reduced for that reason. What happens if she can't pay? Well, that's an excellent question because it seems like she probably won't be able to pay all of that. I think the most likely thing is that there will be some kind of settlement, that Johnny Depp will settle with her and will say, you pay me X amount, or even more likely, because he has made such a point of saying that this is not about the money, it's about recovering his name. I think it's even more likely that what he's going to say is that you pay the money to charity. And if you will pay that money, we both walk away, no appeals. And so I think that's probably the most likely event. I think that's even more likely than an appeal. But an appeal is, of course, possible and would take an awful lot of time. Years, probably. And then it honestly could come down for another trial, which is almost unthinkable after all that happened, which is one of the reasons why I think the appellate court would really, really not want to ever overturn this. I think I've forgotten the original question. I don't remember what the original question was. Hopefully I answered that. Okay, let's see. Kim Harp is asking me, thank you for holding the session. Yes, I've really enjoyed it, actually. Why was the case held in Virginia? Well, the case was held in Virginia because of the fact that the op-ed was published in Virginia. Now, the reason, normally cases are held where the defendant resides. That's a commonplace, or where an incident occurred. So neither Johnny Depp nor Amber Heard lived in Virginia. What a strange circumstance, right? I mean, why is the case being tried there? But the reason is that the op-ed originated there in Virginia. So that's why Johnny did that. Now, when attorneys file a case initially, there could be lots of reasons for doing it, but they get to pick. The attorney filing the case originally gets to pick the jurisdiction where they want to try the case, which can be a huge advantage. And here, Virginia had some law that Johnny Depp's team liked. One of the arguments Amber Heard had was related to the idea that she could make these statements under the First Amendment. She was permitted to do that, and the First Amendment allowed her to do that. Protected. It's called anti-SLAPP statutes, and the idea is we want to prevent people from filing lawsuits against people so they won't exercise their free speech, because that's just not American. We don't want that. So Johnny Depp's team thought that some of the law surrounding that was more favorable in Virginia, and so that was, at least supposedly, one of the reasons they selected that jurisdiction. And that's in partial answer to your question. They could have selected other jurisdictions, and this is the one they picked. So thanks, Kim, for the question. And I see that you want me to go into Instagram and read a statement. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that on the live. I'll do that later. Maybe I can put that in my next chat and respond to that. I'm very curious what he said, but I don't think I'll be able to do that on the live, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, so let's go back into your questions. Concert, anyone? Yeah, Johnny Depp was in a concert, of all things, a couple of nights ago with a friend of his, and it looked like he was having a much better time than when he was sitting in the courtroom. I am sure he was. I've heard he wants to really focus on his music career, so we will find out whether that's true in the coming years. Now, a lot of people asking me about the perjury charges for Amber Heard. I do not see any perjury charges as being likely. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible, because there were parts of her testimony were contradicted pretty clearly. But a lot of what she had said, perjury comes when you make a statement under oath that's false. To me, the biggest possibility would be the statement she made in the UK, where the statement was that she had actually donated the funds to charity after she got her divorce. Her $7 million divorce settlement, she actually donated to charity. That seemed, it was not only something that she said, but it was something that was persuasive to the court. The court actually, in the written order by the judge, he mentioned that. He referenced that, look, she's the kind of person who gives away her divorce settlement. Clearly not a gold digger. That is obviously false based on her own testimony in this case. So that to me is like probably the strongest, a place where you could have perjury, but it's just not going to happen. That's my impression anyway, is that the prosecutors will just virtually never prosecute when there's a private civil case between civil litigants. They're just not going to go into that and prosecute for perjury. So that's my best read of it, is that it's not very likely. So thank you to Pit Clues. Ooh, that's interesting. Pit Clues. I wonder what that is. Okay. Do you think this will encourage or deter high-profile celebrity domestic litigation? Wow. That is such a good question, because has this been a wild ride or what? If anything, may I say, if you are a high-profile celebrity, settle your case. Settle it and get it in writing that everybody will not dispute. Of course, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard did do that. They did get it in writing that they would not disparage each other. And yet, you see that we ended up here, and all because from the beginning, Amber Heard's op-ed and the fact that she chose to publish that op-ed anyway. I think, if anything, this would deter high-profile celebrity domestic litigation, because if you're going to have a divorce, who wants this sort of publicity? I just can't imagine many people would want this sort of in-depth discussion of their mental health, of everything they've ever done, all the worst things they've ever done. I would guess so. Most people wouldn't have the mountain of evidence that Johnny and Amber compiled. It was incredible. All the audio recordings. When do you ever have that? That is so rare. That magnitude of audio recordings, the photographs, the videos, it was truly remarkable how documented this was. But my guess is, Pit Clues, that this would discourage high-profile celebrity domestic litigation. It's not that it would discourage the litigation. People will still file for divorce, but I would think it would make it real palatable to settle that case, to do something instead of having it be a spread across the newspaper, whole world finds all your dirty laundry. That's what I would think. I would think that you would you would definitely not want to do that. So I'm going to wrap it up in just a few minutes. I'll do a final explanation if anybody's coming on you of what happened. But let's see. I wondered that too. People talking about, did she ever hit Elon? Who knows? But he didn't come to trial, but he had been down on her list. You would think that suggests that they were still friends or close, and yet he didn't come to trial. So read that as you will. Are Amber's Heard's lawyers likely to get partial compensation from the $2 million awarded to her without her owing money to Depp? Really good question. I believe what Thriller 5509 is asking is, do the attorneys get paid if Depp's not going to be paid? Well, Wise attorneys have probably already been paid. So, yep, they get paid first. And then Amber will have to try to come up with the money. So I'm going to do maybe one more question. Let's see. What about, that's a good point. What about the pictures that were doctored in a photo editor and presented as evidence? And I believe that the question relates to what about that in terms of whether or not there could be perjury. I honestly thought that the picture evidence was not quite as strong. We had the testimony from the expert who said that, there could have been doctoring, that he talked about the fact that it had been in a certain kind of program. And then we saw the pictures side by side, one that was sort of red and one that was not as red, that was quite, more pale. And they obviously were the same picture, but they had different coloring. I honestly thought that more was a function of a printer having printed it out. That's what it looked like to me, than something being doctored. The other picture that I thought was, I thought this was a more significant matter, was Amber Heard identified the same picture for 2 separate incidents against her, where she said, okay, Johnny Depp abused me twice. And she identified the picture for this date and then also for this date. Well, obviously the exact same picture wouldn't be it. And it was I even did a video on this. You can go back and look at some of those. But the video showed a wine stain on the floor, and it was very distinctive. It had 3 prongs. It was just very distinctive. The only difference was it was cropped differently. And so she identified it twice. Now that was more of a problem, I thought, that she identified that same problem twice. I still stick with my story, though, that I just don't see perjury coming out of this. I'm about to wrap it up, and we'll go ahead and do a recap of what happened. After a real momentous time, the jury came in, and they were going to give their verdict, and the judge sent them back out and said, you left a blank on here for compensatory damages. We don't know whose it was, because when they came back in, this is what happened. Compensatory damages for Johnny Depp, $10 million. Punitive damages for Johnny Depp, $5 million, which the judge reduced to $350,000 because of a cap on punitive damages under Virginia law. So total to Johnny, $10,350,000. The jury thought they were awarding $15 million. Then the jury also awarded Amber Heard on 1 of her 3 defamation claims. Johnny Depp won all 3 of his defamation claims. All 3. Clean sweep. All of those detailed answers that the judge said he had to answer, totally done. So he won everything. Amber Heard lost 2 and won 1. For that 1, she got a compensatory award of $2 million, and she got punitive damages award of $0. So if you offset the 2, Johnny owes Amber $2 million. Amber owes Johnny $10,350,000. So that's $8,350,000 on the case. So we are going to be covering, please, would you write in the comments if you have a case that you think would be interesting for us to cover, please write that down. We are going to be covering all kinds of cases at the intersection of law and life. So if you've got something that you think, that would be really interesting, I'd like to learn more about that, or I'd like to hear about this case, please write that down, because I'm really looking for what kind of content would interest you. So be sure to subscribe and come back to the channel, and I will see you in the next video.